Hello and welcome to this week's edition of On Report, and it's a very apt title for this week's edition because I've got a disciplinary panel of three guests: John Sharp, Phil Bentham and Robert Hicks, and we're going to talk about the way that the game is officiated. Firstly, John, as we sit here a couple of days after the previous round, a pitch invader at Salford, Steve Ganson going into the dressing rooms at Wakefield at half-time in that game. I guess they're two of the things that you've been talking about yesterday and today as you review the weekend just gone.
Yeah, there's certainly plenty of talking points. In particular, like you say, with the headlines this week with Steve Ganson, obviously, and the game at Wakefield, and also the game at Salford, which it's a real shame that we are talking about the lady that ran onto the field, and I thought she got a little bit too far for my liking, to be honest. I was at the game and I was pretty anxious about James's safety, really. I looked to my left as I was up on the gantry, and there's no movement whatsoever from the security guys at Salford, which did concern me, and it was almost, a scary moment for James, which I thought he handled it extremely well. In particular, he said, as I heard him over the comms, "You've had your 15 seconds of fame, now can you leave the field?" Which he acted with composure, as I'd expect from James. But the girl, once she got out to the middle, I think she ran a little bit further than what she needed to or what she wanted to, and had about five minutes rest before she took herself off the field again. But fortunately, it doesn't happen very often in this game. We've got a fantastic product. I thought it was a great game. I really enjoyed the game. I thought both teams threw plenty at each other, and I thought that should have been the talking point, really. The atmosphere at Salford was great. The attendance was fantastic, and both teams really wanted to play. And Castleford have been in great form. Salford have made some great investments with the players that they brought in. I just felt the real vibrancy about the place, and for us to be talking about a pitch invader is certainly disappointing.
And on to Steve Ganson, what's your take on that? Is that something that's acceptable, something you're happy with, something that should have happened?
Yeah, it's become a massive talking point, hasn't it? I know Richard Agar's highlighted the fact that a coach that's paid to coach and coach referees has actually gone into the dressing room at half-time. And I think that's the top and bottom of it for me. We have probably these guys will be able to tell you a little bit more than me, but probably over the last 10-15 years, match officials at half-time have been active places where there's been plenty of discussion, plenty of debate about how that first half's gone, and rightly so. You want to try and encourage some dialect between touch judges and your referees. And Tim's a young, inexperienced referee anyway. When we have someone of Steve's experience and knowledge at the game, in an official capacity as a coach and as an assessor of the referee, then I think Steve's every right to go into that dressing room. Whether what is said is irrelevant. We're talking here about whether he's been in the dressing room or not. Yeah, he did enter the dressing room. But as in regards to the second half and how it was refereed, then that's a little bit ambiguous. I think it's a real ambiguous statement that the game has changed in the second half. We're talking about a 10-6 scoreline at half-time. We're talking about a St Helens team that are a fantastic team, and just behind on the scoreboard, Wakefield playing extremely well. There's ebbs and flows in games. There's ebbs and flows in halves. There's decisions that are made by players and by referees that change the outcome of games. As a coach who coaches a rugby team at half-time, that's your opportunity to get to the guys and just try and maybe tweak a couple of things, or maybe just pat them on the back and say you're going really well. I think that's really important that we have that. There's absolutely no point in having a referee's coach in the ground, sat there for 80 minutes with no presence about the dressing room area. It's something that's not new. You talk about the coaches in the NRL. I know there was an incident last year, and I think it's a Cronulla game, and Daniel Anderson apparently has gone in at half-time and spoke to some of the guys there about a 7th tackle try. If I'm incorrect, then by all means jump in, but it's nothing new, and I'm a little bit surprised that it's hit the headlines.
Just to broaden out and bring Phil and Robin, is one of the main things that you're tasked with almost is providing consistency in your officiating. I guess that's why this has become a headline, as John says, because some people have leaned on the fact that, in their opinion, the game was refereed different in the first half to the second. I think we've addressed that particular incident just then, but as a referee, Phil, is that week in, week out, you've got to be seen to be doing the same things consistently?
Yeah, that's exactly what we look at in review. So we look at consistency of talk to the players. Are we being consistent in how we're tipping players off? I.e., if somebody's not quite coming back 10, are we talking to that player, and are we talking to the opposition player in the same way? By the same means, are we then consistent with our penalties? So if one team are offending in one area, if the other team offend in that area, we've got to be consistent. We've got to give those penalties, and obviously that's what we aim to do, and that's what we review every week to find out. And interestingly, on Thursday night, I refereed Warrington St Helens. Steve Ganson was my coach, and he was in my dressing room at half time, as he's done in every single game this year that I've been involved in, because that's his job, to come in and talk to us about our first half and set us up ready for our second half, just the same as any other coach in the game would.
You're the most experienced man as far as refereeing sat around this table, Phil. Has the spotlight on referees from the media, from the fans, through social media and many other things become more and more year on year?
Yeah, I think it does build up. Obviously, we bought into the Ask a Ref on Twitter, which is something that we decided as a group that we wanted to do, because we wanted to give the opportunity for fans to ask us questions, and then we could get back to them, with the reasoning behind our decisions. Sometimes we have to hold our hands up and say, yeah, we got it wrong, but it's given us an opportunity to get back to the fans, with some reasons why we give decisions. It's not always perceived in the right way, so it gives us a voice as well, which is nice. I think as well, obviously with Sky TV, they do want the referees' decisions to be discussed. Obviously they've got Stuart in there to discuss those. They've got a ref cam, so the referee is large profile, in the sport now compared to what it was 10 years ago.
Just come back on that in just a moment about the ref cam and the innovations. Robert, can anything prepare you for the scrutiny that you are under? You train very hard. John's going to tell us about what you do away from the games, away from match days, to perhaps give people a bit more of an understanding on that. But just while we're on this scrutiny, can you prepare yourself for that or not?
We try every week. That's what our job is. We're scrutinised by fans, by players, by directors, people putting money into the sport, broadcasters. We've got massive pressure on us, but we have to perform at the best of our ability, because it's only like a player. Players are there performing. We've got to do the same thing, facilitate that game, and make a spectacle of a really fantastic product that we have on the field. So we prepare every week. We have previews. We review as a group. We're hard in review. We've come out of a 2-hour review meeting today, and we've only looked at one small area of our game, and that was just some management tips. So we're trying as hard as we can to be prepared, to be under the spotlight, and work hard on the biggest of stages. And both Phil and I were on the biggest game of all, the World Cup final this year. Nothing really prepares you till you're on that field, and you've got to go. But our coaches and ourselves, we work each other hard in training on the field, off the field, when we're watching videos back, when we're talking just generally in changing rooms before games, after games. It's all about improvement and striving to get as good as we can be for that, really.
John, at the risk of portraying you as a veteran here, the game will have moved along from your playing time through to your coaching, both internationally in club rugby, and now to your role now. Rugby League innovates, it always has. Has the technology, has the way the game is covered helped referees, or has it not? Has it had a negative effect on the way that the game is officiated?
I think it's different. I think it's very different, and certainly from the days of scrum down, I think it was, way back when. I think how we portray now as a sport certainly are innovators. I think you look at the touch screen that we have now, and the department of match officials department buying into Sky production and buying into innovation as well to market the game is absolutely crucial, and a big one for me certainly. I do really believe that these guys are, every movement that they make on a pitch is scrutinised. We even strap a camera to their head now just to get some better pictures, and these guys have bought into something that's certainly setting the standard. With regards to that, we have to be on the money as well as coaches. We have to be innovators. We have to be right at the cutting edge of coaching, whether that be GPS and managing loading and psychology and nutrition and the overall athletic preparation of our referees is absolutely crucial. Then add to that the scrutiny of the media and the fans and this enormous bubble that these guys perform in. It makes preparation absolutely crucial. And I think the key area is that although the game innovates and although the game develops, at the centre of the game is the 6 tackles, making good judgments, managing players, managing situations, being able to handle pressure situations and confrontation, which is absolutely crucial to whether you're a coach or a player or a referee.
Do they get enough help? Because I often watch on television, as I'm sure people watching this do, we can see 10 different camera angles of an incident. We can have a panel of 4 or 5 people made up of former international Super League coaches. They can't reach a consensus of agreement on that, and yet we're expecting Phil, Robert and their colleagues to do that in a split second and stand by that judgment.
I think the game, that our stakeholders within the game, whether it's the media or whether it's Sky TV or whether it's BBC, I think it's crucial that they do talk and call the game as they see it, and it does apply pressure, and it does apply, I think, an high expectancy from these guys, and with that becomes responsibility from me really, and the weight that's put on my shoulders, and also my assistants in Ian Smith and Steve Ganson. The expectancy and the scrutiny is enormous, but we scrutinise ourselves every day. We get ourselves ready every day. We take probably a disaffected look at how they perform. We stand back and we look at how they perform and look in fine detail at the performances, probably the week that they've just had leading into games, and obviously the review process is crucial as well. So although we scrutinise, we're quite happy to be involved in what is a fantastic sport. We're quite happy for our performances to be scrutinised. Sometimes it's a little bit uncomfortable. I'm sure these guys they're nodding their heads here. I'm sure these guys will admit that it is a tough job, but it's also a rewarding job, particularly when you nail a performance and you get positive feedback.
It is funny, isn't it, Phil? Because like John says, when we look at players in any sport, they're judged on their wonder moments, the things that they do in games really well.
Yeah.
Often referees, again across sport, are judged by mistakes that they make. Is that quite a strange thing to have to sort of compartmentalise and work out mentally for you?
Yeah, well, it is because obviously within the media and fans, we are judged on mistakes and errors, which is why it's vitally important when we get in on a Monday that we look at some of the good stuff that we've done as well. Where people have worked really hard to get in a good position to make the right call. So we look at that as well from a positive point of view, and hopefully, if I've had a particularly good game where I've done something right, I've got in the right position, made the right call, the other guys then can look at it and think, well, that's what I need to do this week in that situation. So, we try and look at the positives, but obviously we've got to fix up the things that we get wrong as well.
Last thing on sort of mistakes and negatives for now, Robert. Everybody will have had at some point in their career, players again and officials, a mistake early in the game that you've got to put to the back of your mind and not let it affect the consistency of how you officiate the game. How tough is that to do? If you know that a try's come from something, or someone spent 10 minutes sat on the bum on the bench for something that maybe they shouldn't have done, you've realised in the game, does that make it difficult for you?
Psychology is a massive part for us all, and we've all made huge errors and sometimes minor errors that people don't even realise have happened. We know we've made them straight away, but it's all about moving on to the next decision, the next play of the ball. I sort of studied this week. There's 11,000 decisions in a rugby league game, so if there's 11,000 decisions, you don't have time to dwell on the one mistake you might have made a minute before. It's the next play of the ball. Did he play the ball correctly? Was the pass off dummy half correct? You're moving on so quickly in our sport, the speed we play, you don't really have time to dwell until either half time, and then it's important that you and your team, and why coaches coming in is a massive important part for us. We've got to get ourselves back on the horse and keep going to the next decision and get through the 80 minutes with as few errors as possible. We're only human though, we're going to make them.
John, I know you like stats obviously from your coaching background, and I know that you look at them when you're reviewing the referees' performances. Let's flip it over, let's not focus on mistakes and errors. What sort of percentage of decisions are these blokes getting right week in, week out? What's sort of acceptable to you, and what are you aiming for? Obviously 100% is the overall aim, but what are you sort of running at, and what is the sort of target?
It's interesting. We have two girls at Carnegie University who are both doing PhDs, one in the athletic performance of referees and the stresses that the game brings. And we've also got a girl who's analysing errors and analysing and breaking down movement of referees and errors in times in games and heart rates. It's going to be a fantastic piece of work when she finishes with it. To quantify it and to put it into percentages is nigh on impossible. It really is, absolutely, because I know you mentioned 11,000 decisions. How do you quantify 11,000? Where is the tick box exercise where you can say this is right, this is wrong, and this is right, and this is wrong? And this is where there's probably been a bit of a mind shift in cultures from under Stuart's regime. We've gone away a little bit from whether this is right or this is wrong, but why is this right and why have you got this wrong? And if you have got this wrong, well, let's try and minimise the times this is going to happen to you, and let's put you in a situation out on the field. Let's paint a picture out on the field. Let's give you a scenario where this is where you were last week, or this is where you could be this week. We're going to put you in a wrong position where you shouldn't really be and where we wouldn't like you to be. But if you can do that in practice during the week under fatigue, then it gets you ready for making and reducing the errors that you talk about.
Phil, what's the one thing then that's up on the referees' room at Red Hall that needs to improve as far as officiating is concerned for the game on a whole to improve?
I think if you asked me that question a few years ago, it would have been working more together as a team rather than individuals, because we had a group of blokes that trained together, but with only one prize being the Challenge Cup final or the Grand Final, we all went off individually to try and achieve that. What we've realised is that by sharing ideas and working together, what we can actually get is a point where we all improve, so the whole group improves, and hopefully, people will start to recognise that as a group of referees, we are getting better. So that's more or less our aim as a group. That would be the one thing that we want to do, is to make sure that everybody in the group is improving.
Would it improve the game as a whole, John, if it was officiated in the Northern Hemisphere as it was in the Southern Hemisphere, or vice versa, if there was one way of doing things?
Standardization, obviously, it brings its own pitfalls as well. It's not just about, we've got the same model here as what they have in Australia. I think it's very much about the quality of the coaching, the quality of the people that you have around you. It's almost like having a great idea or a great plan, but not having either the money or the resources to execute that plan. I think it's really important that what we have one referee on the field at the moment. Hopefully we'd like to develop that, and with some investment and pushing the game forward, we may well like to have two guys on the field, certainly to help with in and around the ruck area and speeding the game up a little bit more, although I think looking at the stats, we are getting a little bit quicker this year. The first 6 rounds are showing that ruck speeds have increased or reduced by about 0.3 of a second, which might seem nothing, but in the context of 400 or 500 play the balls, it does lend itself to a quicker game. But a standardisation of rules, I'm with. In particular, these guys have just gone through a World Cup and they've refereed in one mindset, and then they're expected to change for a World Cup, and then the guys go back and then they drop back in. And it's the same for the players. I remember speaking to Steve Mack about the advantage rule, and we played it over in England, and we've got the advantage play, and it evolved to being a really good play, and it still is. We're executing it much better now as clubs, as players, and as referees. We understand how it should work and how it should be executed, and it's a great concept. And poor old Steve Mack's got his players there practicing and during the week, and then executing on the weekend these fantastic advantage line plays and going 80 90 metres to score tries. But then the week after, or a month later, he's got at the back of his mind, I hope these boys aren't going to play a free play or an advantage play when the ball's on his own try line and pop, pop, pop. And it's an anomaly, really, that I think we do need to standardise and come back to certainly one set of rules, an international set of rules for all, and also how the Australian system at the moment, there appear to be a little bit in front of us with regards to two referees. We've now 2 video referees.
Do you have enough to do that though, John? Sorry to cut in, but do you think you've got enough referees that you could do? Do you have enough referees now anyway?
I think there's always, it's not about numbers. We can have enough referees, but it's about having quality, and it's about having an investment in time and in resources and in regards to personnel to improve these young referees and push them forward. I think when you have quality in numbers, then the numbers issue isn't an issue, but just to create other posts and then appoint people that aren't quite up to it or are ready for it, then those appointments are completely worthless and add nothing to the game.
Just a final couple of points to you two, because we're running out of time. Robert, you're on Twitter. One of 2 or 3, I think Richard Silverwood is, and Tim Roby is as well. Obviously the RFL referees as a whole are on Twitter. People can ask questions. Have you found that experience a good experience? Is it a good idea to almost throw yourselves at the mercy of the internet court on a weekly basis?
We're at the mercy of everyone, and every week fans have views on what we do, probably more than they have on their own team at times. I found Twitter to be generally a positive experience, save for the odd what I'd call keyboard warrior who finds time to put things on, and perhaps the Twitter rules aren't great for that. But whatever gets us out there and gets our message out about what we're thinking and how we're doing can only be good for the sport. It's very easy to criticise something when you don't know what goes on, whether that be in the week, whether it be the rules on the game, whatever it might be. It's easy to criticise without knowing the facts. But once people get to know the facts, I think people generally accept what we're doing. And Twitter's been a pretty good experience for us. It's not perfect, but the world's not perfect. So yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Phil, final word from you. It's a topic I guess we could have discussed more, but the motivation of becoming a referee is often an unfathomable one to someone who isn't one.
Yeah.
But for anybody watching this, who's an aspiring referee, an up-and-coming one, or maybe somebody, I know there was going to be a push to bring some ex-players to try and fast-track them through into it. What would you say to anybody who's thinking, I'd like to be the next R. Silverwood, S. Ganson or P. Bentham? What would your message almost be to them?
I think if you want to be involved in the game, there's lots of different routes that you can take, and I think it comes down to your personality, of whether or not you want to go down the route of coaching an amateur team, or whether you want to be out there in the middle. For me, it was probably a fairly easy choice. Even at school, I would always be playing the game, but I'd be shouting at everybody about what they should be doing and different things. So it became an automatic choice for me, and I would say that the career that's there now, particularly with being the possibility of being full time, it's a great opportunity for people to be involved. And the rewards are there. You get obviously the travel. You get to be in the middle of big games, and I think those are all there for people to take.
Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for on this week's edition of On Report. I'd like to thank Rob, Phil and John for not showing me any dissent. If you'd like to get in touch with them and ask them a question via Twitter, it's at RFL Referees. Until the next time from On Report, thank you, goodbye and ta-ra.